Hi, welcome to Quantum Canine. How are you today?
Good morning, Trish. Very well.
Today we thought we would skip the video question and give a basic overview of your theory, because we sort of throw things out at people randomly. And so I thought what I would do is explain to you how I understand it, and then you could correct me and expand on it.
Okay.
Because often people ask me, what is natural dog training and how is it different? And what I say is really in the marketplace, there are two prevailing theories. One is that the dog lives in a pack and the human needs to be the dominant leader, the alpha male, and keep the order, the hierarchy, so that the dog knows its place and that everything is about discipline and sort of almost oppression. And the other theory...
Or some would say respect for authority.
Respect for authority.
Pride in accomplishment.
Right.
Put it in a positive light.
Right, and that you have to keep, everybody has to be in their place and kept there at all times. There's a feeling of like maintaining order.
Yes.
This
it's
strict,
a trickle-down authority that renders cooperation, esprit de corps.
And then the other theory is that dogs are little learning machines, and that if you reward them for behavior enough, that's how they learn what to do.
Right.
Is because every time they sat, you gave them a cookie. Every time they sat, you gave them a cookie. You did it again, you did it again, you did it again. And now they know what the word sit means.
Right.
And what's so hard to explain about your...
And that theory, just to tie it up, that theory is attracted to the scavenger. Dog evolved as scavenger around the first village dumps. So the wolf that was the last to leave at the approach of humans to dumping refuse, and the first to return, or proto-wolf, whichever common ancestor, may not have been the wolf itself, but some canine closely related to the wolf. So anyhow, there was this natural selective filter to reward approachability.
The friendliest one.
Yeah.
Right.
So the operant conditioning, learning behavioral science theorists are very attracted to that village dump theory of domestication, whereas the other dominant hierarchical theory, pack theory I call it, is very attracted to the wolf being the dominant hierarchy and the human as stand-in for alpha pack leader.
But of course, you have a completely
Neither
different
one is
idea.
right,
Neither one's
exactly.
right. And sometimes I think what's hard to explain is a lot of the ways that you explain it, it's just not in the common language yet, and so people get confused. But what the common denominator between those two theories is that they presuppose that the dog has a sense of self, sort of independent from everything else. Like it knows itself as its own little self-contained entity, and therefore it has to obey or it has to please. They want to please, so it has a sense of self, distinct and separate from the human. And and then the other thing is, which I'd love for you to talk about again, is how your theory, what you believe about the domestication. So how your theory is different from those two theories, and as I understand it, your theory is that dogs evolved from wolves, and that the core element in that is the dog's ability to cooperate, and to cooperate within a hunt.
Right.
And that's what you want to emulate with your dog, is that cooperative nature, and not the dominance hierarchy or some sort of reward-based thing. So maybe you could elaborate.
In my model, it almost doesn't matter which theory of domestication is true or not, because it's always going to substantiate my model, because it's an energy model. So I like to use the example that we don't know what caused electricity, but if we study the behavior of electrons and energy strictly in terms of what it's doing, then whatever theory ends up being, be it the Big Bang or not, the creation of the universe, will always conform to what we have learned about energy, because we're studying it as a function of energy. So I've studied behavior as a function of energy. So whichever domestication scenario proves to be true will fit my model perfectly. But what I will say is that no matter what scenario turns out to be true, what was being selected for was not friendliness, which is generally what everybody's saying, either submissiveness, docility, tameness, approachability, friendliness. And I'm saying that doesn't make any sense. That sociability is not a function of friendliness.
You're saying sociability is just an innate part of a wolf and a dog, and I think I've heard you guess that if you had to take a wild stab at it, the domestication of the wolf or whatever probably had to do with hunting.
Right. It has to do ultimately with shared desire.
Right.
So let me try to put that into energy terms. If you had to create a robot that would mimic animal consciousness, this is what I would do. I wouldn't use software. I would use a battery, and I would increase the voltage to that battery so that this organism would have two basic problems: balance and hunger. So if you just satisfy the balance problem, well, you're still hungry. You have to go out there. So if you look at the definitive feature of canine consciousness, it is that they are hungry for more than they can attain on their own. Their force of desire is so strong that they are compelled to cooperate with others. Now, if two beings want the same thing, then they can communicate. So if you want something and I want something, we can communicate in terms of that thing.
And let's bring that down.
Well, let me just make one more point.
All right.
If two beings want the same thing that is more than either one of them can get on their own, they can connect.
Like the wolves. The
wolf
wolf pack with the
right,
moose.
Right.
And when you're training a dog, it's a bite object that you want it. I mean, you don't really want it, but you pretend to want it.
Yeah.
And the dog wants it.
The dog will want it because I pretend to want it.
Because you pretend to want it,
right.
so you both want it, and that's how you can communicate with the dog.
Yep. And then if it's more force is required to like if you just give a dog a cookie and reward him, there's no energy to that.
Right, so what?
But if he has to really work to get something that you've displayed you want, then he starts to want it. All his energy can go into it. And then he is innately inspired to cooperate with you because it's the way his very consciousness is organized.
So you want the object, he wants the object, and later in the next show we'll show how you use that bite toy to really just mold the behavior in this amazing way.
Yeah.
And the dog just naturally cooperates.
Like when people look at my website, they see the dogs working for food, but they are unbelievable. They are flying for the food, and they ask me, "What kind of food are you using?
Right.
What kind of special high-value food is it?"
Right.
But it's the regular dog food.
Just kibble, right?
Yeah, but the dog has learned that he gets the food by overcoming resistance, which means he can put his heart into it, which means it's the most fun he could possibly experience, overcoming that challenge. He gives me credit for that fun, so he just starts living for that work.
So we go back to the model, and the model is wolves have to overcome a huge amount of resistance to take down a moose.
Right.
And they have to work as a cooperative unit
Right.
to push through hard, maybe for 2 days,
Right.
to take down a moose, and they're willing to give all their energy to it, and they work as this cooperative unit. You're taking that into the field and saying, overcome resistance by pushing through my hand, and you will get this object of desire.
Right.
And that's how they learn cooperative behavior with
Right.
human. It's not because you're dominating it, and it's
Right.
not because you're rewarding behavior.
Right. They follow the one who wants something the most. That's
Right.
the leader. And it can flip polarity at any moment. It tends to be one has more appetite than another for reasons we can talk about. But it can, like if you give the weakest one a bone, he will keep that bone because he has a stronger feeling for that bone because it's in his mouth. He can taste it, the weight of it, the texture of it, and he will keep that bone. And the others will defer to him because he wants it more than they do. So there is one perfect example in nature of two species cooperating together for an object of desire that neither can get on their own, and it's the Aboriginal whalers of New Zealand and Australia who wanted the right whale or the blue whale, this huge whale that was migrating too far out to sea for their little whaling boats. Meanwhile, those whales are too big for the killer whales to kill, and they can go down deeper than the killer whales and stay down deeper, so the killer whales can't hunt them. So legend has it that a shaman beseeched the killer whales to drive them into the bay where they could harpoon them, and they left them out in the bay, and then the killer whale ate the tongue. And they actually did symbiotically connect, communicate, cooperate. Western whalers took up the practice. They actually did the same thing with the killer whales. The killer whales herded them into the bay. The Western whalers slaughtered the whales and left them out overnight, ate the tongue, hauled them up the next day and butchered them. And it's a documentary on Discovery Channel if people want to look into it. So I believe that's a perfect template for how wolf or proto-wolf or whatever it was that hooked up with man, early man. They both wanted the same thing with a force of desire. I call it the shaman scenario.
I like that.
Some shaman broke through.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. And we see that with how people relate to dogs. I mean, they're hunting dogs, and how, the way you work with dogs is you're both...
Whatever we want,
right,
the dog wants. And that can actually sculpt genes. And Michael Pollan wrote a beautiful book called The Botany of Desire. How plants, he features 4 plants, marijuana, apples, I forget the other couple, but a couple of the plants, corn, and the flower, the taste, it molded itself to human preferences to increase its propagation. So plants are biologically organizing themselves in conformance with human desire.
Oh, wow.
And I believe animals are organizing themselves. And the only animal that could cross the divide was the canine, fully ingratiate itself with humans. And the reason that is because they want what we want.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when people are questioning me, like, what is this? What is this theory? What is this thing that you're doing? And I say, it has to do with desire.
Right.
You're fueling the desire in the dog. You're working with their natural desire, and you're amplifying it, and you're ramping it up, and you're satisfying it. That's what natural dog training is.
And then what's really amazing is desire is also information. First, it draws things together with a force that simple social contact can't consummate. So they're innately inspired to align with each other towards that which can satisfy it. So it's like energy. They're drawn together with such a magnetic force, which is why we see so much magnetic repulsion in the pack, because they can't connect with each other. You see so much friction and avoidance behaviors and tension, growling and posturing.
Then they got to go out and hunt so they can get in alignment.
Yes, and that is just heating them up. That has been mistaken as the source of cooperation.
Right.
And it couldn't be further from the truth. It's stressing them out, compelling them to get out there. It's the moose that teaches them how to cooperate, if you want to use the word teach.
Yeah, because if you want to look at, if you've ever seen any of those videos of the wolves taking down a moose, I mean, it's like a ballet. I mean, it's so amazing how they respond to each other, and how it can take days to bring down a moose.
There are instances of 3-4 day hunts. David Meach has photographed them from with radio collared wolves, taking days and days to kill a moose.
So I don't know how we're going to segue into our first topic. We were talking about how it relates to...
Well, it actually comes down to your beginning of talking about the sense of self.
Okay.
Our human impression of everything is it's self-contained. We see an animal, we can't help but think of it as a person. It has a self-contained intelligence.
And we assume that it has a sense of its own self.
And we assume that it connects the dots like our brain connects the dots.
Okay.
And we see ourselves relative to other selves, relative to our surroundings. Animals do not make that kind of conjecture.
Did you mean they feel part of everything?
Yes, they do not feel a part and then connect things by some kind of rationales.
Right, because they're not thinking.
Right, they are feeling, and they do not make a distinction between what's out there and what they feel in here.
Okay, and so we were going to talk about what you, in beginning of training, what you teach a dog is a settle response.
Right.
And so how does that relate to sense of self?
Well, they project, so how they arrive at a sense of self. What if you were to ask an animal what its sense of self was, if it could think, it would point to its physical center of gravity.
Here?
Yeah, right. Well, it would be right between the hips because of the poised position.
Right.
Whenever it's kind of move, which, by the way, is what the tail is organized around. So the tail is indicative of its relationship to its physical center of gravity.
Okay.
And so the dog then projects its physical center of gravity onto objects of attraction. And when that moves, and I won't get into all the mechanics of it, it feels a corresponding movement within its physical center of gravity. It's just as if, via Pavlovian conditioning, It's when something that it's attracted to moves, it feels the movement. If you just take food and you move it, you can just see the dog mesmerized. He can't resist following your hand. And if you look at circus trainers, they can teach dogs to do backflips and somersaults because they get the dog to project its physical center of gravity into this object of attraction.
Into the food itself.
Into the food through force of desire.
So are you saying that the dog actually feels itself in the food?
Yes.
So the food moves, it feels itself,
Exactly.
the dog feels itself moving.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do
That's why it's so visceral. It's actually viscerally connected, physically connected to whatever it's attracted to. If you were to ask it. So if you were to ask a dog that's looking at a rabbit, where is yourself? He'd say the rabbit. That's myself.
Okay.
And I want myself back. So he projects himself out there, and then he wants to retrieve it, because now he feels a gap. And that gap is energy. That makes, it's like a synaptic gap between potentials. One side is a deficit, one side is a surplus, force of desire. Behavior is leaping the gap. Behavior is the same thing as a neurochemical cascade where an electrical arc leaps the synaptic gap. That is exactly all behavior is.
And so why do you want to teach that subtle response?
So that the dog will gain confidence that I'm ingratiating myself into that sense of dog self. I'm making sure the dog's giving me credit so that it starts to align with me to get what it wants. And that's what another word for that is cooperation. And the dog's now feeling itself in me. Therefore, he feels attracted to me. Therefore, he's eager to take direction from me. But he's not seeing himself relative to me. He's feeling me as part of himself.
Right. He feels himself in you.
Exactly.
And so when you move, he wants to move in alignment with you.
Right.
And that's why that subtle response is important. And I don't know many people that I don't know anybody else that teaches that subtle response.
No, not that I know of. But
I've never
I
heard of
predict
it.
in 10 years, everyone will
Everybody will do it.
And they'll be calling it operant conditioning.
Right.
So
Well, we could show a clip of you working on that.
Okay.
And we've got like a beginning clip of when you just started to teach it, and then we have a couple months later when the dog can handle a little bit more.
Okay, good.
So we got a couple of those. So we'll run that clip and see what Kevin does in the field. Talk over it.
Up you go. Good. You want to get that settle response. Good. You done with her before?
No.
Good. Yeah, so what we want to do here is get the dog really paying attention to its physical center of gravity in conjunction with the food. So she's right on the edge of a precipice there, a little low rock, and she's learning to settle into herself, her physical center of gravity, keep herself poised to get what she wants. She falls off, she gets back on. I'm not commanding her to do anything. She's learning to fine-tune her behavior to get what she wants. One way you can sum up all animal learning is an animal learns to move its body to affect how an object of attraction makes it feel. So when she vibrates, it goes away. When she settles into her physical center of gravity back by her tail, I zing her with the food. And you can see her, this is the very first experience that her head can't help but move.
She go swimming?
Now that settle back response,
Did she go swimming?
that settle back response is she's tuning into her physical center of gravity. And she's giving that credit for getting what she wants. This is, by the way, is why dogs sit for a cookie, is because they're referencing their physical center of gravity. And that feeling they feel is what caused something good to happen.
Okay, well that's the first time you ever did that with that little doggy.
Yep, hero.
Yeah.
Hero.
And then we have another clip of you showing how she's sort of mastering that. So as a puppy gets mature, they're able to master that feeling more. They can handle more.
They can hold on to a feeling longer and longer and under higher and higher rates of distraction. When they're little puppies, they can't. But as their capacity gets stronger as they get older, if you work with it.
And so that's one of the reasons why you don't do an awful lot of training in the beginning, because they just don't have the holding capacity
Right.
to do all these things.
Right.
And that's another difference between what you do and what's in the marketplace. In
Yeah.
the marketplace, they're all about, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it.
Well, like you said earlier, the marketplace looks at them as learning machines. And now I'm adding in another layer of feeling my hand, not as a controlling. Again, I'm making myself part of the energy circuit, so she feels my hand on her shoulder as a softening thing. It makes her want to lay down. Now she's popping right up. This is going a little bit fast for her. Now, I'm not saying sit or anything. I just want her to innately, autonomically, spontaneously do it on her own.
And you're not pushing her.
No, I'm just resting
And you're
my
letting her
hand.
do whatever she wants.
Right. If she gets too crazy, she falls off the rock. She literally knocks herself over.
Okay, I still think we have another clip of her when she's a little bit older.
Good,
but,
good.
I was talking to somebody and they were telling me that they can't get their dog to lay down and to go down and do the down command. And they took it to a trainer who put a choke chain around the dog's neck. This is a Great Pyrenees, and stepped on it with its foot and forced the dog to go down. And it had a major, major panic attack,
Right.
and it didn't work. And so she wanted to know how do you teach a dog to go down? And I said, down is a feeling.
That's true. Well, let's look in nature. When do we see that? No one's out there teaching wolves to do anything. And I would challenge the idea the mother teaches them how to hunt. We'll get into that at some point. But you can just imagine the wolves are on the trail on the high grass, and a deer is coming down, not seeing the wolves. What do all the wolves do?
They all lay down,
Boom.
right?
And now there's 200,000 volts of energy in the system, but without conflict, they lay down. So there's some kind of mechanism, if we were to identify it, that would spontaneously command our dog to down, and that's what we want to hook our command to. Attach it to that.
And when you're putting your hand on her shoulder, is that where you're going with
Well,
that?
the front shoulders put out thrust to overcome resistance, and we want to soften that. So if wolves see the deer, and if they can't catch a deer, it's too fast. They have to get it. They have to surprise it. So they got all this energetic awareness going on. So if they were to chase it prematurely, it's just going to get away.
Right.
So all that forward thrust sublimates, and they feel this urge to touch their chest, the bottom of their heart, by the way, to the ground. They want to pull. They feel pull they push and a pull to the ground. So that's what I'm using the food for them to feel the pull. And I'm using my hand to soften their shoulders, which usually stiffens up. So by tasting the food, their whole body relaxes, and they innately, by positioning the food, they feel a pull to the ground.
So once again, you're working with an innate desire and not a force.
Right. Inside that force of desire is information, how to get what you want, and that's the pull to the ground.
So let's watch another clip and see what we got going here with the progression into down that you're doing with this little puppy. Oh, this is different.
This is new doggy. Okay.
Oh,
This is cool. This is here's.
No, now he's going to take it away. We're having technical issues here,
Okay.
but anyways, I know you would have gone with that.
Sure.
We could have gone talking about that dog all day
the
long.
one that says down, stay down.
Down. Well, we're talking about down stay. So, what do you think of the whole thing with the Great Pyrenees and the standing on the choke chain?
Yeah, the animal felt a loss of control over its body, and that induces panic. There's no evolved mechanism where any organism, even a human being, will allow something to take over control of its body. That's horror. So everything's a deal we make. We get into the dentist chair, there's a contract. We make a deal. All right, I'll do this, but it's going to pay off for me, right? You get on a train or a plane, there's an implicit contract. You don't even get to a line at the motor vehicle department unless it's moving. That's why they give numbers now. So
Right, I'm going to give up my body to the line
Right.
because I know I'm going to get there and talk to the guy.
it's going to move.
Right.
So when that dog was put in a situation, it felt no pull to deflect itself, to make itself do something different than it was doing. So it was trying to maintain itself, which was 4 feet on the ground
Right.
in an upright position. So the trainer, without any context, decided to change that, but didn't give the animal a means to do it. And their Great Pyrenees are meant to resist. That's what makes them livestock guarding dogs.
Really?
Yeah, so the trainer was just arbitrarily decreeing that 50 million years of evolution, 2,000 years of, or 10,000 years of domestic selection, all out the window because I decree you lay down. It's rather...
So you're saying there was no reason?
There was no law of nature by which that dog could lay down, so it resorted to its default setting to stress, which is resist, as it should do, as it was designed to do by nature and by livestock guarding breeding for the last thousands of years.
So what I was really impressed with your first dog that I met, Elo, was we were in the backyard and a cat ran through,
Right.
and you said down, and he just went boom, like as fast and as hard as I've ever seen anything happen. He turned around and looked at you like with
Right.
so much energy. And so what you're showing here with the down is
Yeah.
you got to that place
Through this, right.
through this.
Right. It makes total sense to the dog to give up its energy to me, because that means more energy is unbeknownst to it. It's somewhere around the bend.
And then you went up and you grabbed a Kong or
Then I
something.
probably played
you
with
played
him,
with
right.
him. Right. And so that's how you get to down.
Right.
And you were...
So I don't teach a dog, like in police work, not to let go of the helper, the criminal, because I tell him to. He learns to let go of the criminal because there's a better bite coming. The number one motivation of animal behavior is potential energy, not real energy. I think I mentioned earlier, Aesop had it wrong. It's the bird in the bush is more valuable than the bird in the mouth, bird in the hand. So all animals organize towards potential energy. So, and you have to also realize that matches the physical center of gravity. There is no actual material site for the physical center of gravity. It can go anywhere. Matter of fact, a gymnast, the physical center of gravity isn't even in their body.
So the physical, let me see if I can bring this down to earth a little bit. Because what I'm imagining is you've got 2 sticks, you've got a dog. The dog has a stick, but you got another one.
That's potential.
He wants
More
that
power.
one. He
Exactly.
drops that one and goes into that one. So he's
Right.
projecting his center of gravity into the object of attraction, the stick.
yeah.
And the one he doesn't have is more desirable than the one that he does have.
Right, as
That's
it
what
should
you're
be.
saying, as
Exactly.
it should be. That's how nature is designed.
Right, that's how we're designed. We always, you go to the store, you're going to buy it. It's a one-person operation. You're going to buy the object. You show up at the register with the object, with your checkbook. How much is the tax? And the phone rings. What does the merchant do? They answer
they
the
go
phone.
to the phone,
That's
right.
potentially a customer. The customer right in hand, who cares about that? Of course, go get to the potential customer. It's probably not even a customer, but it's potentially a customer that's potentially more money.
So we're always drawn to the potential energy and
Right.
not the
That's
energy in
actually what
front of us.
desire is organized about. It's not about real energy, it's about potential energy. Because we're dealing with evolution, which is always add new energy to the system, otherwise you're not evolving.
Okay.
And so how does it make potential energy? By projecting its physical center of gravity, which is, again, immaterial. It's really just a feeling, and it can project it
into anything.
into anything, and then how that moves informs it what it is, and therefore how to align with it.
So it could be a person. It could be a stick. It could be a car.
Car, moose, anything.
Okay, that is.
And its sense of self is composed on whether or not it feels connected to what it just projected into its physical center of gravity, just projected into what's attracted to it.
So here's a question. A dog sees a child.
Mm-hmm.
It projects itself into it, but it doesn't feel connected to it. It barks? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's right. It's got all this energy that can't move, so it just barks to relieve the energy. And it's attributing itself to that child, which is why it looks the child in the eye. And we could get into the eye contact because that goes right to the physical center of gravity. If you notice when someone stares at you, you'll start to feel an uneasiness
Here.
in your stomach, especially
Yeah.
if it's really malevolent. You'll feel that. So that's because your physical center of gravity is starting to jiggle, it's starting to get uprooted from you.
So we've established a dog has no sense of self.
It has a sense of self, but it's not a
not
mental.
a self-contained entity
It
of
doesn't see
selfness.
itself
Right.
relative to other selves. There's only one self, its self.
Right.
If it can't project itself into something, it's not attracted to it. That thing doesn't even exist as far as it knows. It's a nothing. So if it didn't project, it goes by trees. That tree is nothing to it. But if it projects into that tree, like if it hits the tree and it projects into it involuntarily, all of a sudden that tree is a being.
So the dog only exists. A dog only exists in relative to other things. In terms
It's as a part to other things, not relative to other things. So it doesn't ever see itself apart from anything.
okay, it feels.
It feels itself apart, or there is no thing there. If it doesn't feel a part of something, there's no thing there. That's why dogs lift their legs on trees, because they project into this form, and then it's not moving, so they lift their leg on it as a way of expressing attraction to it, indirect way of expressing attraction.
Well, it's always fascinating to
Okay.
talk to you about these things. I think I've got it. I hope so. So, join us next time for some more.
We will continue
Yeah.
the education with Tricia.
Yeah, right. See if I ever get there. And we'll see you next time.